The war had ended, or so the Galactic Coalition believed. For months the stars above the ruined worlds of the Sol system had burned quietly, free of the thunder of human engines. The last known human fleet had been destroyed near the red dwarf system of Terath, where the Coalition had thrown its combined strength into the final assault. It had been a brutal battle, thousands of ships lost on both sides, but the result seemed clear. Humanity had fallen. On the gray plains of Terath, enormous banners of victory fluttered over alien camps. Troops from a dozen species filled the command plaza, their voices echoing in triumph. They called it the Cleansing War's end. At the center of it all stood High Commander Threxen, a towering reptilian figure whose black armor reflected the light of 3 suns. He raised his 4-fingered hand high and silence swept over the crowd. "The Terrans," he announced proudly, his voice booming through loudspeakers, "are no more. Their last fleet is dust. Their world's empty. Their courage broken. Today the galaxy breathes free." The soldiers roared in response. Flags waved, instruments blared, and even the sky seemed to hum with their celebration. For them it was the end of an era, a time when the galaxy could finally rest without the unpredictable fury of humankind. But not everyone celebrated. At the edge of the plaza stood Commander Kethra Voon, a female officer from the avian species known as the Kyrell. She was younger than most commanders, her feathers silver blue, her eyes sharp and always searching. Kethra had fought humans before. She had seen their ships, their strange courage, and their stubborn refusal to surrender. And something about this victory felt too easy. While others drank and cheered, Kethra stayed near the communication post. The sky above Terath shimmered faintly with the light of orbiting ships, thousands of them, Coalition destroyers, carriers, and cruisers guarding the space above. Yet as she looked toward the horizon, her small screen beeped softly. An energy fluctuation. Weak but steady. Coming from high orbit, Kethra frowned. "Strange," she whispered to herself. "That pattern looks human." She tapped the panel and ran the signal through filters. The result blinked in yellow. Unknown human signature detected. That was impossible. Every human ship had been accounted for. The Coalition had spent weeks scanning debris fields, confirming kills, tracking escape pods. No human vessels had escaped the slaughter at Terath. Kethra turned to a nearby technician, a short, green-skinned Saurian. "Run a full-spectrum sweep on that signal," she ordered. The technician blinked nervously. "Commander, the High Council said no human activity remains." "Do it anyway," Kethra said quietly. "This one doesn't fit." The technician hesitated, then obeyed. Moments later, the console lit up again, this time brighter. "Source located," he said.
"High orbit."
"It's faint, but it's moving." Kethra leaned closer. "How big?" "Roughly the mass of a small cruiser, but readings are unstable. The object might be cloaked. The word made her feathers rise. Only one known species had ever attempted stealth technology that worked in combat, and they were human. Kethra turned her gaze skyward. The suns glowed orange and pale blue over the horizon, and for the first time since the battle, she felt a chill crawl through her wings. Up in orbit, among drifting wreckage, a shadow moved. It slid between the twisted remains of broken ships and cooling metal, silent as a ghost. Its hull was blackened, its lights dimmed, its engines nearly dead, but inside that silent shape life stirred. Aboard the vessel Resolve, Captain Elias Vance stood in the command bay staring at the holoscreen. His uniform was worn and patched, his face lined by exhaustion, but his eyes burned with quiet determination. "How long until they notice us?" he asked softly. His navigator, Lieutenant Grace Holloway, replied without looking up. "Not long, sir. The Coalition fleet is on full sensor alert, but we're holding the stealth field at 90%. We might blend with debris for a while." Vance nodded. "A while is all we need." He turned toward the viewport. Beyond the glass, he could see the enemy fleet. Hundreds of ships perfectly aligned, their formation stretching like a wall of light across the stars. Somewhere below them was Terath, the world where the Coalition celebrated humanity's end. He allowed himself a small, grim smile. "Let them celebrate," he said. "They earned it," Grace frowned. "Sir?" Vance looked at her. "Because when we show up, I want them to remember what it feels like to be wrong." On the planet below, the celebration continued. Commander Threxen gave another speech. Soldiers toasted their victory. The galaxy's media drones circled above. recording every word for their histories. But in the middle of his address, the sky flickered. A strange shimmer appeared high above the clouds. Faint, almost invisible, like the reflection of light through water. At first no one noticed. Then the shimmer grew brighter, forming the vague outline of something vast. Technicians in orbit began shouting over comms. Unidentified mass detected. Repeat, unknown vessel decloaking. Kethra's communicator crackled in her ear. Commander, we have a situation. Something's emerging near debris field C9. She rushed to the nearest console and opened a live feed. The image was grainy, distorted by radiation, but unmistakable. It was a ship. A human ship. Its hull bore marks of war and fire, its once white plating scorched and torn. Yet across its damaged frame, a single name was still visible. UN's Resolve. Kethra's heart skipped a beat. She had heard of that ship. It was part of the 3rd Terran Fleet. The one reported destroyed 6 months ago, she whispered. Impossible. Alarms screamed across the Coalition fleet. Warships scrambled into position, raising shields and charging weapons. Commanders shouted conflicting orders. The High Council demanded explanations. Threxen, furious, stormed toward the control tent. Who dares interrupt my victory speech? He roared, I want that thing shot down. Kethra's voice came over the comms. Sir, we need to confirm before we engage. If that ship survived, silence. Threxen snapped. I said destroy it. Above them, the human ship drifted quietly, engines still cold. Then with sudden purpose, its front lights flicked on. 2 bright blue eyes staring into the darkness. A transmission channel opened. A calm human voice spoke through every frequency. This is Commander Elias Vance of the United Human Systems, he said. You thought we were gone. You thought you won. You were wrong. The words froze everyone. Every alien, every soldier, every leader who had just celebrated. The air seemed to vanish from the command halls. Even Kethra felt the weight of that voice. It wasn't pride or anger she heard. It was something else. A promise. Threxen hissed and slammed his clawed hand on the console. Fire all batteries! End this ghost! Missiles streaked through space. Plasma cannons burned the void. The human ship vanished behind clouds of light and explosion. For a moment, it seemed the Resolve was gone again, destroyed once more. But then, from within the blast, a single blue flare ignited. It wasn't debris. It was an engine, alive, burning, accelerating. The Resolve emerged from the fire, its weapons online. A storm of kinetic slugs erupted from its cannons, tearing through the Coalition's first line. One cruiser shattered instantly. Another spun away in flames. By the stars, Kethra whispered. They're fighting back. Inside the Resolve, alarms blared, but Vance stood steady. Direct hit on enemy cruiser, Grace reported. Shields holding at 70%. But they're swarming us, sir. Vance smiled faintly. Good, let them come. He opened the comm again, broadcasting on all open channels. This is what happens when you underestimate us, he said quietly. Humanity doesn't surrender. Humanity adapts, he cut the line and turned to his crew. Let's remind them why they feared us. On Terath, Kethra watched the impossible happen. The lone human ship danced between fleets of hundreds, using broken debris as shields, vanishing and reappearing like a phantom. Every move seemed unpredictable, illogical. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and still they fought with precision and fire. For the first time in her long career, Kethra felt admiration. And a trace of fear, she whispered softly, almost to herself. They declared victory, moments before the human appeared. And far above, in the dark silence of space, the legend of humanity began again. The stars around the battlefield burned like silent witnesses. The Resolve moved between them, a scarred ghost of humanity's past, yet alive, fierce and full of purpose. Inside the ship, Captain Elias Vance stood on the bridge, watching the tactical map flicker with red dots. The enemy fleet surrounded them from every side. Report, Vance said, his voice steady though the ship trembled slightly under the force of nearby explosions. Shields at 58%, replied Lieutenant Grace Holloway. Weapons system stable but overheating. Reactor cores running above safe levels. From another console, Engineer Nolan Pierce, his uniform dark with engine grease, added, We're pushing every coil to its limit, sir. This ship wasn't built to fight alone. Vance nodded. Then we'll remind them what humans can do with one ship. He turned his eyes toward the main screen. The Coalition fleet moved like a massive wall of fire, beautiful and terrifying. Hundreds of ships shining with perfect order and discipline. Against them, the Resolve looked small, broken, and hopeless. But Vance knew better. Humans never measured victory by size. Flashback. 6 months earlier. The memory came uninvited. The last stand of the Terran Third Fleet had been chaos. Human ships burning across the stars. Earth's colonies falling one by one. The Coalition, powerful and confident, had outnumbered them 10-1. In the middle of the storm, Resolve had been hit hard. Fire spread through her decks, her engines nearly destroyed. The order came through the fleet channel. All human ships fall back. Evacuate survivors. Do not let them capture the AI cores. Vance remembered watching the flagship Solstice Dawn vanish in a ball of light. He remembered the silence after when no one answered his calls. Humanity had died that day, or so the galaxy believed. But Resolve had not died. They had fallen into a dark gravity storm, engines barely holding together until the ship drifted into the empty void between stars. Weeks passed. Food ran low. Hope ran lower. Then one night, as he looked out at the stars, Vance had whispered a promise to himself. If humanity is gone, we'll carry what's left, even if it's only one ship. Back to the present. The Resolve shook violently as a plasma beam grazed its port side. Direct hit! Section C-12 damaged, Pierce shouted. We're losing pressure. Seal it and reroute power, Vance replied calmly. Yes, sir. Grace turned to him. Captain, there are too many. We can't fight all of them. We don't need to, Vance said. We just need to show them that we're still here. He tapped the holomap and pointed at a section of the enemy formation. They're using heavy cruisers in a tight line, overconfident. If we break one, the others will lose coordination. Humans invented chaos. Let's use it, the crew nodded. They all knew what that meant. Fast, unpredictable maneuvers. Risky, dangerous. Exactly what the Coalition hated. The counterattack. The Resolve accelerated suddenly, diving straight toward the enemy wall. Beams of plasma streaked past her hull, some missing by meters. The ship's gravity engines roared. Inside, the crew clung to their stations as the inertial dampers struggled to keep up. Targeting Central Cruiser, Grace called out. Load kinetic rounds, pattern Alpha 7, Vance ordered. Fire on my mark. The Resolve closed distance faster until the enemy commander's voice echoed across open channels. Human vessel, you are outnumbered and surrounded. Power down and surrender. Vance smiled faintly. Surrender isn't in our dictionary. Fire! The Resolve unleashed a stream of magnetic slugs, massive projectiles that ripped through space faster than light pulses. They struck the Coalition cruiser dead center. The explosion lit up the void like a new star. Cheers erupted across the bridge. Direct hit! The cruiser's gone, Grace shouted. The rest of the enemy formation wavered for a moment. It wasn't much, but that hesitation was all humans needed. The Resolve turned sharply, weaving through the confusion like a dancer through flames. Down on Tarath Commander Kethra Voon watched from the command outpost. Her screen showed the impossible. One human ship fighting, moving, winning. This isn't strategy, muttered one officer beside her. It's madness. Kethra's feathers ruffled slightly. No, she said quietly. It's human. She had fought them before. She remembered how they acted when everything was against them, like fire refusing to die out. She pressed her comm link. Fleet Command, this is Kethra Voon. I request permission to approach the battlefield. I want a closer reading of that vessel. Denied, Threxon's voice snapped. Remain in position. The Council wants the ship destroyed. Understood, Kethra replied, but her eyes stayed on the screen, full of curiosity and something else. Respect. Inside the Resolve as the battle raged, alarms flashed red. Shields down to 20%, Pierce shouted. Hull damage increasing, Grace added. Multiple enemies closing in. They're surrounding us again. Vance looked calm, but he knew they couldn't hold forever. How long until the stealth drive recharges? He asked. 3 minutes, maybe 4, said Pierce. If it doesn't overheat again, then we'll make it 3, Vance replied. He opened the comm line to the crew deck. All hands, prepare for evasive maneuvers. Remember who you are. Remember what you're fighting for. Even through the static, he could hear the quiet responses. Aye, Captain. Every voice sounded tired but determined. They had lost their home, but they still had purpose. The hidden mission. While the enemy regrouped, Vance stepped toward the main console where a locked data chip glowed faintly. Grace noticed. "Sir, is that—" "Yes," Vance said softly. "The last message from Earth Command." Before they fell, he inserted the chip and a hologram flickered to life, a woman in an admiral's uniform, her voice calm but urgent. "To any surviving human ships, this is Admiral Sato. The Coalition has taken our colonies, but not all hope is lost. There is one last refuge, the Sanctuary, hidden deep within the Veil Nebula. Protect it. Carry our legacy there. If humanity is to rise again, it will begin from that place." The hologram faded. Silence filled the bridge. Grace looked at him. "So that's why we're here." Vance nodded. "We were never meant to win battles. We were meant to survive long enough to protect what remains." The Resolve turned sharply, heading toward a dense field of wreckage. Behind them, enemy ships followed, firing relentlessly. "Sir, they're herding us into the debris," Grace warned. Vance smiled slightly. "Exactly where I want them." He pointed to a section of the field. "Those wrecks contain unstable reactor cores from their own ships. One good shot should light them up." The crew understood instantly. As the Resolve dived between the twisted remains, Pierce armed the torpedoes. "Target locked," Grace said. "Fire." The torpedoes exploded, and in a chain reaction the wreckage field erupted into a storm of fire. Half the pursuing fleet vanished in the blast. The Resolve shot through the flames, disappearing into the darkness beyond. Cheers filled the bridge again, but Vance didn't smile this time. He looked at the stars ahead, where a faint light glimmered like a path. "The Sanctuary," he whispered. "We're coming." Back on Terath, Kethra stood in silence. Around her, alien officers shouted, trying to explain the disaster. Reports came in of destroyed cruisers, lost fleets, and a single human ship vanishing into hyperspace. Threxen roared with fury. "Find them. I want that ship hunted down." Kethra didn't answer. She simply watched the fading signal on her screen and murmured. One ship, and they shook an entire armada. She had fought many wars. She had seen bravery before. But nothing like this. Somewhere deep inside, a question took root. Were the humans truly the monsters we called them? Or were they something greater? Aboard the Resolve hours later, the ship drifted in silence. The crew moved quietly, repairing damage. Pierce wiped sweat from his forehead. "Engines are stable, Captain. But we need a place to rest soon." Grace nodded. "We're low on supplies too." Vance looked at the stars. "The Veil Nebula isn't far. If the Sanctuary is real, that's where we'll find answers." He turned to his crew. "We've lost our world, our families, our friends, but we're still human. And as long as one of us draws breath, humanity isn't gone." A quiet pride filled the bridge. Even in the cold emptiness of space, the words warmed them. Outside, the Resolve glided forward, its engines glowing softly, a lonely spark of defiance in the endless dark. The Resolve drifted in the cold darkness of space, the void stretching endlessly on all sides. Stars glittered faintly, distant and indifferent, but inside the ship, life moved with purpose. Captain Elias Vance stood at the bridge's main viewport, his gaze fixed on the faint blue glow ahead, the outskirts of the Veil Nebula, a swirling cloud of gas and dust that hid humanity's last hope. The Sanctuary. "We're close," Vance said quietly. "I can feel it." Lieutenant Grace Holloway studied the sensors nervously. "Captain, the Coalition fleet is reorganizing. They're sending scouts toward our last known position. They'll find us if we're not careful." Vance nodded. "We expected that. But we've survived this far. We can survive a little longer." His voice was calm, even comforting, yet it carried a weight that pressed on the crew like gravity. Engineer Nolan Pierce tapped at a console. "We're holding together, sir. Shields are still stable. Reactor core is at 65%. But any more sustained fire and—" His words trailed off. "Then we won't give them more than a glimpse," Vance said, turning sharply. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Keep us hidden in the nebula." The first human spark as the Resolve entered the nebula, the swirling gas and magnetic interference made it nearly invisible to sensors. The Coalition fleet, despite its numbers, would have difficulty tracking a ship this small in such chaos. "Evasive pattern Delta 3, Vance ordered. The ship's engines shifted, sliding along the dense currents of plasma and dust. The Resolve twisted like a living creature, hiding behind glowing tendrils of nebula gas. The crew moved silently, their nerves taut. Every sound of the ship, Hydraulic hiss, console beep, engine hum was magnified in the quiet. Then, unexpectedly, a soft chime echoed from the comm station. It was faint, almost like a whisper. "Signal," Grace said, leaning forward. "It's a human transmission, weak, old encryption. Probably from a hidden station inside the nebula." Vance's eyes narrowed. "Show me." A holographic map flickered to life, showing a cluster of small blips buried deep inside a veil of cosmic dust. One larger blip marked a hidden base, the sanctuary. "That's it," Vance whispered. A quiet smile touched his lips. "We're not just surviving. We're going home." The Coalition's uncertainty. Meanwhile, far from the nebula, Commander Kethra Voon observed the movement of the Resolve from her post aboard the Coalition flagship. She had followed the battle from Terath, watching as a single human ship defied hundreds of ships, dancing unpredictably between volleys of plasma fire. Reports from scouts confirmed what she already suspected. The humans were heading toward the Veil Nebula. "They're not just escaping," Kethra murmured. "They're leading us somewhere." Her superior, High Commander Threxon, slammed his clawed fist against the console. "I want that vessel destroyed. Track it. Follow it into the nebula if you must." Kethra hesitated. She had the ability to intercept the humans before they reached the sanctuary, but something in her mind resisted the order. Humans were dangerous, yes, but she had never seen a species fight like this, not for conquest, not for greed, but for survival, for hope. "They're not monsters," she whispered. "There's something more." Inside the sanctuary, far inside the nebula, hidden from prying eyes, the sanctuary awaited. It was a massive station built into the core of an asteroid, a blend of technology and ingenuity that reflected human practicality. Solar collectors, defense turrets, and communication arrays were scattered across its surface. Inside, the station was quiet, the corridors dimly lit, the hum of machinery echoing softly. Hundreds of humans, preserved in cryosleep for decades, were beginning to awaken. Their eyes blinked open at the soft automated voice that guided them, their minds adjusting to a world lost to time. Vance had kept their arrival secret. He could not risk Coalition sensors detecting the awakening. Every step, every life mattered. Humanity's last survivors would not be exposed to enemy fire. "Prepare the medbay," Vance instructed, his voice calm but firm. "We bring them home." Grace turned to him. "Captain, they've slept for decades. How will they survive?" "They'll survive," Vance said simply, "because that's what humans do." The first contact as the Resolve approached the sanctuary, Vance initiated communications. A soft encrypted signal pulsed toward the station. "This is Captain Elias Vance," he said. "We bring the last survivors of the Terran fleets. Prepare for docking." Inside the station, automated systems confirmed the vessel. The docking bay doors opened. The airlock sealed, and the Resolve gently attached to the station. Crew members secured the hatches and moved carefully into the corridors of the sanctuary. The scent of machinery and recycled air filled the halls. Humans, fragile yet enduring, waited to greet them. Vance's heart ached as he watched them emerge, faces pale from sleep, eyes wide with wonder and fear. Families reunited. Children once frozen in time blinked at the reality of stars and machines. He spoke softly to them. "You're safe now. We've found you. Humanity is not gone. We are here." Tears, laughter, and whispered words of relief filled the hall. Humanity had survived its darkest hour. The Coalition strikes, but safety was short-lived. Sensors aboard the sanctuary flickered with warnings. The Coalition fleet had detected the Resolve signal. Even hidden within the nebula, their presence could not remain concealed for long. Kethra's fleet arrived first, navigating carefully through the gas and magnetic storms. She watched the human station carefully, analyzing its defenses. "Captain Vance," Grace said urgently, "we have visitors. Not friendly ones." Vance smiled grimly. "Then let's show them the spirit of Earth." The humans, though few in number, began preparing for defense. Torpedoes were loaded, shield generators powered, and every survivor capable of action was trained quickly. Even in the face of overwhelming force, the determination of humanity shone brightly. Every hand, every mind worked with precision and courage. The spirit of humanity, Kethra's fleet opened fire, testing the station's defenses. Energy beams hit shields, but the sanctuary held. Vance's crew had anticipated this. Using the terrain of the asteroid and the nebula's interference, they lured enemy ships into traps. turning their numbers into a disadvantage. From the bridge of the Resolve, Vance observed the battle with a calm focus. "Humans fight differently," he said quietly. "Not just with weapons, but with creativity, with willpower." Grace nodded. "It's inspiring." Vance smiled faintly. "It's what sets us apart. Every species can build machines, fire weapons, or follow orders. But only humans. We find a way when there is no way. That's our weapon." Even as missiles exploded and the nebula raged around them, Vance felt a quiet pride. Humanity's spirit could not be measured by technology alone. It burned in every person aboard the Resolve, in every survivor aboard the Sanctuary. Kethra's choice high above, Commander Kethra observed the chaos. The humans had survived impossible odds once more. She had seen them fight, innovate, and endure with courage that defied all logic. Something stirred inside her. A quiet respect, a sense of admiration she could not ignore. "They aren't just survivors," she muttered to herself. "They're something more." Her communicator beeped. Orders from Threxen came, demanding the immediate destruction of the human station. Kethra hesitated, her feathers bristling in thought. She looked at the swirling nebula, at the small, determined station hidden within, and whispered, "I will not destroy them. Not yet. They deserve to live, to prove themselves." It was a dangerous decision. Defying the High Council was punishable by death. But Kethra had learned one truth. Humans were not to be underestimated. And something told her that the galaxy was about to witness their true strength. A flicker of hope inside the sanctuary, humans moved with renewed determination. Vance walked among the awakened survivors, giving instructions, offering comfort, and ensuring every life mattered. He paused in the central hub, looking at the faces of his people, faces that had slept through the fall of humanity and now faced the galaxy's wrath. "Remember this," he said quietly. "They thought we were finished. They thought we were gone. But humanity does not give up. We adapt, we survive, and one day, we will rise again." A quiet murmur of agreement spread through the hall. Eyes brightened, hearts lifted. The spark of hope, the true spirit of Earth, glimmered once more in the darkness. Outside, the nebula swirled like a protective curtain. The Resolve rested beside the sanctuary, battle-scarred but alive. Somewhere beyond the stars, the galaxy waited, and soon it would remember why humans were feared, and why they should never be underestimated. The Coalition's Grand Chamber was filled with silent tension. Dozens of alien admirals and council members stood around the holographic display showing a single human ship. Resolve. For weeks, the name had spread through every world under their control. It was a ghost that refused to vanish. "The humans should have been gone," growled Lord Vexen, one of the Council's oldest war leaders. "How is one ship causing this much damage?" No one answered. They all knew the truth. Resolve was not just a ship. It was a symbol. And symbols were harder to destroy than fleets. Commander Kethra stood near the edge of the room, watching the hologram quietly. She had seen Resolve with her own eyes during the last battle. She had seen the courage of its crew, the impossible tactics they used, and the way their captain, Elias Vance, never surrendered. Something inside her had changed that day. She no longer believed the stories the Coalition had told for years, that humans were dangerous animals who needed to be erased for galactic peace. Instead, she saw them as something else, survivors. Hours later, Kethra stood on the bridge of her ship, Vorath's Claw. Her orders were clear. Track Resolve to its last known coordinates and destroy it. Her second officer, a sharp-tongued alien named Trell, spoke softly. "We have their trail, Commander. The human ship entered the nebula region of Sector 9. If we move quickly, we can corner them." Kethra gave a slow nod. "Prepare the fleet. But stay alert. The humans always have surprises." Trell gave her a puzzled look. "Commander, with respect, they are one ship. We have 50. There can be no surprise." Kethra didn't answer. She remembered Resolve's last battle, how it had slipped through enemy formations, turned their own weapons against them, and vanished into a gravity storm. Humans did not win by numbers. They won by thinking differently. Inside the nebula, the Resolve drifted in silence. The ship was badly damaged. The once proud hull was scarred and cracked. Inside, the crew worked tirelessly to keep systems running. Captain Elias Vance stood in the command center, his uniform torn, his expression calm but determined. Around him, his small crew moved like a family. "Status?" he asked quietly. Shields at 20%, replied Lieutenant Mara. Engines stable. Life support is holding, but we don't have enough power to jump again. Vance sighed softly. Understood. Keep us hidden for as long as you can. He turned toward the forward screen. Through the misty light of the nebula, faint blue lights blinked in the distance. The hidden base known as the Sanctuary. The Sanctuary was an ancient asteroid station built long before the war. It had been Earth's final refuge, and now, after years of silence, it was time to wake its sleepers. The crew gathered in the cryo chamber, where hundreds of transparent pods lined the walls. Inside each one slept a man, woman, or child, Earth's last survivors. Scientists, engineers, and families who had fled before the planet fell. Mara spoke softly, her voice trembling. I never thought I'd see this day. Vance placed his hand on one of the pods. Neither did I. But this is why we fought, Mara. This is why Resolve exists, to bring them back. He looked around at his tired crew. We've lost everything, but we're not gone. Today we wake humanity's heart. As power flowed through the cryosystems, the pods began to hum softly. Lights flickered on one by one. Slowly, people began to stir inside. The humans of Earth were waking from their long sleep. At the same time, deep outside the nebula, Kethra's fleet entered the region. The glowing clouds of ionized gas lit up the dark space around them. Commander, Trell reported, we are detecting faint energy signatures inside. It could be the human ship. Kethra gave the order. Advance carefully. Keep formation. The fleet moved in, dozens of ships piercing through the fog of colors. Suddenly a signal appeared on Kethra's screen. A human transmission. It was Elias Vance's voice, calm and strong. This is Commander Elias Vance of the human race. We are not done. You declared victory once, but humanity has just begun again. The bridge fell silent. Trell's face darkened. He dares to speak as if he still commands an empire, but Kethra did not speak. She could feel something in his words, a strange pull in her chest. There was no hatred, no vengeance, only courage. On Resolve, the crew watched the sensors light up. The Coalition fleet had arrived. There are too many, Mara whispered. We can't fight them all. Vance stood tall. Then we don't fight for victory. We fight for time. He ordered the crew to begin uploading the data from Resolve to the Sanctuary. Maps, ship designs, human archives, everything that remained of their civilization. If they were destroyed, humanity's story would still live on. The Coalition fleet began firing. Blazing energy beams cut through the nebula, shaking Resolve violently. Systems sparked, alarms blared. Return fire, Vance commanded. Resolve answered with its rail cannons and plasma torpedoes, tearing through the first few enemy ships. But there were too many. The ship trembled under the storm of firepower. Inside, the crew held their ground. They were afraid, but they did not stop. Kethra watched the battle unfold. Her ships were winning. The human vessel was breaking apart, but something in her couldn't feel proud. She saw how the humans fought even as their ship burned. They refused to surrender. Every move they made was clever, desperate, and brave. Trell turned to her. Commander, final strike orders are ready. Kethra's claws tightened around the edge of her console. She hesitated. Commander? Trell repeated, confused. Hold fire, Kethra said quietly. What? They're nearly finished. Why hold back? Kethra looked at the human ship again. Because destroying them won't end this war. It will only make their story stronger. Trell frowned. You're disobeying a direct order from the Council. Kethra turned to face him, her voice firm. Maybe it's time someone did. She opened a private channel to Resolve. Human ship, this is Commander Kethra of the Coalition. Stop your engines. I am not here to destroy you. Vance's crew stared at the signal in disbelief. Mara looked at her captain. Do you trust her? Vance shook his head. Trust? No, but maybe she's seen what we've seen. He opened the channel. You have my attention, Commander. Kethra's voice came through, steady but filled with emotion. You fight with honor. I cannot watch this continue. I am ending this. At that moment, her ships turned their weapons, not toward Resolve, but toward the rest of the Coalition fleet. The sudden betrayal shocked everyone. Coalition ships scrambled in confusion as Kethra's forces opened fire on their own. The nebula became a storm of chaos. Explosions rippled through the clouds. Resolve used the moment to protect the Sanctuary, covering it with its damaged hull. Kethra's flagship took heavy hits, but she didn't stop. "For peace," she whispered, "and for the truth." Vance watched through the viewport as her ship shielded Resolve from a massive blast. Mara gasped. "She's protecting us." Vance nodded slowly. "Then we won't let her stand alone." Together, Resolve and Kethra's fleet turned the tide. The Coalition armada, confused and leaderless, began to fall back. But the victory came with a cost. Both ships were burning. Both captains knew this was only a delay, not the end. As the last enemy ship retreated, Kethra's damaged vessel drifted beside Resolve. Her voice came through weak but calm. "Captain Vance, I will face punishment for this. But I had to see what your people truly were. Now I know." Vance smiled faintly. "You'll always have a place among us, Kethra. Humanity doesn't forget its friends." Kethra's ship went dark as power failed. Resolve turned back to the sanctuary. Its engines flared weakly, guiding the asteroid base deeper into the nebula's protection. In the quiet after the storm, Vance looked out the viewport. The stars shimmered faintly beyond the clouds. Mara joined him. "Do you think the galaxy will ever understand us?" she asked softly. Vance's eyes remained on the stars. "Maybe not today, but one day they'll remember. Not for what we destroyed, but for what we refused to give up." He looked toward the faint glow of the cryopods, where the newly awakened humans began to walk again under the dim lights of the sanctuary. "Humanity isn't gone," he said quietly. "We just needed a reason to rise again." And far in the distance, the Coalition's once mighty fleets were breaking apart, their alliance shaken. They had declared victory once, but this time, they would never forget who they were up against. The nebula glowed softly around Resolve and the sanctuary. The storm of battle had faded, leaving only silence and drifting wreckage. Pieces of destroyed Coalition ships floated through the glowing mist like silent witnesses to what had happened. Inside the sanctuary, the newly awakened humans were still adjusting to life again. Engineers checked systems, doctors examined those who had slept for decades, and children walked under the artificial lights. Seeing the stars for the first time, Captain Elias Vance stood on the observation deck, watching them through the transparent glass wall. For the first time in years, there was laughter on a human vessel. It was soft and uncertain, but it was real. Lieutenant Mara stepped beside him, her uniform still marked with smoke and dust. "They're alive," she said softly. "I almost forgot what that sounded like." Vance smiled faintly. "So did I." He turned his gaze to the wreckage outside. Somewhere among the drifting remains was Kethra's flagship. Her betrayal had saved them all, but she hadn't answered any signals since the battle ended. Vance lowered his voice. "She gave us time, Mara. Now we have to use it." Deep within the sanctuary, the control center came alive with new activity. Screens flickered as systems reconnected. The humans who had awakened were engineers, pilots, scientists, each one a small piece of what Earth had once been. "Captain," one of the scientists called out, "the data transfer from Resolve is complete. We have the full archives, maps, ship schematics, even cultural records from before the fall." Vance nodded. "Good. Begin copying it into the sanctuary's core memory. Humanity's story must never be lost again." The scientist hesitated. "Sir, what will we do now?" "The Coalition will come again. We can't stay hidden forever." Vance looked around the room at faces filled with both hope and fear. "We rebuild," he said simply. "But not for war, for survival. We find others like us, lost colonies, old ships still drifting. We light the stars again, one by one." His words spread quietly through the station. People who had woken up from long dreams began to work with purpose. Engineers repaired the hangars, pilots restored small ships, and young soldiers trained under dim lights. For the first time since Earth's fall, humanity was not just surviving, they were preparing to live again. Far away, in the broken remains of the Coalition fleet, messages of confusion and fear spread like wildfire. Reports said that one of their own commanders, Kethra of the Tarathi, had betrayed the Council, that she had sided with the humans. Many soldiers refused to believe it. Others began to whisper, "If one of us could see value in them, maybe everything we were told was wrong." On the world of Varnus Prime, the Coalition Council struggled to maintain control. Lord Vexen slammed his clawed hand against the table. "They humiliated us. One ship and a traitor destroyed our entire fleet. An advisor spoke carefully. The people are questioning the war, my lord. Some think the humans deserve a place among the stars. Fools, Vexen roared. We will crush them again. Every trace of humanity must be erased. But behind his rage there was something else, fear. Deep, gnawing fear, because if humans could return once, they could do it again, and next time they might not be alone. Back in the nebula, Resolve floated beside the sanctuary like a wounded guardian. Mechanics worked day and night, welding broken panels and patching the hull. Mara entered the bridge carrying a datapad. Captain, the engines are stable again. We can move the sanctuary soon. Vance looked at her with relief. Good work. We'll head toward the outer rim, somewhere quiet, somewhere the Coalition won't find us. He paused as a faint signal appeared on the monitor, a weak distress beacon coming from the wreckage field. Mara frowned. That's impossible. There shouldn't be any survivors out there. Vance's heart skipped. Open the channel. Through static, a faint voice whispered, This is Gekethra. If anyone can hear me, Mara gasped. She's alive. Without hesitation, Vance gave the order. Prepare a shuttle. We're bringing her home. The shuttle pushed through the debris field, its lights cutting through drifting metal. After an hour of searching, they found the shattered remains of Kethra's ship. Inside a damaged escape pod, they found her, unconscious but breathing. When she woke, hours later, she was inside the medical bay of Resolve. Her eyes flickered open to see Vance standing beside her. You saved my people, he said softly. Now it's our turn to save you. Kethra looked at him weakly. You shouldn't have risked it. The council will come again. They won't stop until you're gone. Vance shook his head. They'll come, yes. But next time we'll be ready. Not just to fight, but to stand. She smiled faintly. Humans, you never give up. He smiled back. It's what we do best. Days passed. The sanctuary grew brighter, busier, louder. The cryo chambers were now empty, and every human aboard had found a duty to serve. Children learned history from teachers who spoke of Earth's blue oceans and green fields. Engineers repaired old drones to help rebuild. Pilots tested new ships made from both human and alien parts. Even Kethra, still recovering, began advising them on how to use Coalition technology without being detected. One evening, she stood beside Vance on the observation deck. The nebula shimmered beyond the glass. Your people remind me of something I had forgotten, she said softly. What's that? Vance asked. Hope, she replied. In the Coalition, we follow orders without question. But your people, you fight for what you believe even when it seems impossible. That is something I cannot unsee. Vance nodded. Hope is humanity's oldest weapon. They stood in silence, watching the stars. Weeks later, the sanctuary and Resolve were ready to move. Engines hummed, lights filled the corridors, and humans gathered in the main hall. Vance stood on a raised platform addressing them. His voice carried across every deck. Years ago, he began, the galaxy watched us fall. They said humanity was finished. That we were too wild, too dangerous, too stubborn to survive. He paused, looking at the faces before him. Faces filled with strength, fear, and determination. But here we are, alive, standing, breathing. They declared victory once. But they forgot one thing, we never stop fighting for tomorrow. Applause filled the hall. Soft at first, then stronger. Vance continued. We will travel the stars again. We will find those who were scattered. We will build not just ships but homes. And one day, when the time is right, we will show the galaxy who we truly are. He looked out at the sea of faces, at the children, the engineers, the old soldiers. Humanity is not an empire, not a weapon, it is a promise. And that promise will rise again. As the engines of the sanctuary came alive, the massive asteroid slowly began to move. Resolve took point, guiding it toward the open stars. In the command center, Mara smiled as she watched the stars shift across the display. We're moving, Captain. A new course, unknown space. Vance placed his hand on the console. Then let's see what's waiting out there. Outside, the nebula glowed one last time behind them, like a curtain closing on an old chapter. Far across the galaxy, in a dark council room, Lord Vexen stood before the other leaders. The humans escaped, he said bitterly. They are rebuilding. One of the younger generals spoke nervously. Should we pursue them? Vexen's eyes glowed faintly. No, let them run. They cannot rebuild fast enough to matter. But deep inside, he was not sure. He remembered the old stories, their fire, their defiance, and for the first time in his life, the great warlord felt something new. Not anger, not pride, but doubt. Back aboard Resolve, Kithra joined Vance on the bridge. "They will come for you again," she said quietly. "I know," Vance replied. "And when they do, they'll find a galaxy that remembers who we are." He turned toward the stars ahead. "We'll travel world by world. We'll help those who need it. And when humanity returns, it won't be in anger, it will be in strength." Kethra smiled softly. "You sound like someone who already knows the ending." Vance looked at her and then at the vast sky beyond. "The ending? No, just the beginning." The Resolve's engines flared, cutting through the darkness. The sanctuary followed close behind, carrying the reborn spirit of Earth into the endless unknown. And somewhere in the galaxy, a whisper began to spread, soft at first, then louder. "The humans are back."